Okay, this is planning board for October 25th, 2023. Pam, you want to start with attendance?
Sure. Michael Gore,
Present.
James Barr,
Here.
Bob Romer,
Here.
Austin Groner is absent. Eric Nyland, absent, and Michael Lau.
Here.
Okay, first item on the agenda tonight is 357 Main Street. I think a modification to a special permit we granted. We have Seth Donahoe from Dilson Roy with us.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having us here tonight.
Good, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. If I can give you a quick overview, because I know that there's been some board member changes since this was initially permitted.
Yep.
Great. So we were actually before your board back in 2021, and this property is 357 Main Street. Some may know it as the old Skinner property, which is directly across the street from Slater's. The building is tucked back from the road quite a bit, so it's a little bit difficult to see. And what Pam has put on the screen, that is the rendering of the proposed facade at the time of the initial permitting. At the time of the initial permitting, a lot of the discussion related to some of the site work associated with the project. There really wasn't much discussion about the building because this is essentially a reuse of the existing building with some minor upgrades, mostly internal upgrades. And the applicant, as he's moving into the building permit phases and other phases of the project, he's come up with a much nicer facade. And so we have submitted a letter to your board along with some facade details that just show what the actual finished structure will look like. Again, there's no changes to the footprint. This is strictly architectural changes. And that is indeed what's being proposed. So very similar, darker walnut style wood and some gray trim around the building. The left side of your screen is probably the only portion of the building that's readily visible from the street. Much of the entryway you actually have to drive up onto the site to actually get a good glimpse at. So we're hoping that this would fall under the category of an unsubstantial change so that they can move on with the construction related to these improvements.
Yeah, so I took a look at the drawings. I don't have any problems with the facade changes. Again, this was a couple years back, so I mean, I vaguely remember discussing some of the other things around it, but I didn't remember the facade specifically. I mean, I think this rendering looks great. So I don't have any issues with this. I don't know if other members of the board. I don't know if any. I don't know if Jim, you were probably on it back then. But
No, it looks good.
I was excited to see that they were doing work there at the project. I kind of had given up on them. It had been so long. Was there any particular reason for the delay, or?
I would probably say that COVID didn't help much.
Yeah,
I think it certainly helped their pool business. I'm
that's
speculating.
I thought everyone was buying pools during COVID.
Yeah, but I think their priorities probably had to shift a little bit. This
Yeah.
is something they probably wanted to get on the fast track and still had to work at their regular job too while they're at it. So,
Okay.
you know, their goal is to really wrap this up. And when you drive by, you'll see that much of the stormwater management system is in fact online and the site's in really good shape. So there's no issues construction wise. This is just moving into the final stages here.
Yep. When do they anticipate construction kind of wrapping up, do you know?
I think as soon as possible. So I am not involved in those actual discussions. We assist with the planning and permitting side and construction layout as we move through the process. So I know that they're moving into finalizing the parking areas and pavement very shortly here, I think before the winter season. So that's something that can wrap up. And I expect that the building won't follow far behind that.
Okay. Pam, do you want us to make a motion on this, or is it just enough that we're okay with the changes?
No, I think you should make a motion of the unsubstantial change. approving the updated facade drawings.
I will make a motion to approve the facade changes to 357 Main Street special permit as an unsubstantial change.
I'd second that.
Michael Gore,
Aye.
James Barr,
Aye.
Bob Romer,
Aye.
Michael Lau,
Aye.
passes 4-0.
Okay.
I appreciate that, board members. There was, we had requested earlier back in July, there was a request related to relocating some of the parking spaces, 6 of the parking spaces. I know that Pam is playing catch up on a lot of stuff. We've spoken a bit. Was that something that's on your radar, or is that insignificant enough as well?
Can you review the changes? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, so I can share my screen if that's all right with you.
Sure, just give me a second to. Okay, you should be all set.
Let me hit the magic button. And this request was related to these spaces right here. So the hatched area on the screen is actually the extent of the existing pavement that's on the site, that's been there for many decades. And part of our project was reducing that. So the applicant would like to incorporate 6 spaces here. And when it was initially permitted, there's an overflow parking area behind the building. We're essentially relocating those spaces from this back section to this area here and turning this into a permeable surface now, because they will no longer need that for parking. They fully meet the board's parking requirements, and there's no changes to the approved number of spaces associated with this. So we're hoping that that would be considered insubstantial too, as it's entirely within the limits of the existing pavement, and no changes to the parking numbers.
Yeah,
Is
I mean,
that
if you-
permeable
Go ahead,
area
Bob.
going to be available for parking? I mean, why is it
Yeah.
not grass, for instance?
So initially, when we had gone through this process, due to the use of the building, it's a showroom for a pool facility primarily. It is not incredibly intense with the required parking that they'll need, and that back area was to make sure that if it ever converted to a use that the board, or that it could be used for at full capacity. Of course, that would mean we'd have to come back to the board still, but we reserved an area that would accommodate those extra vehicles under that scenario.
Okay, but up until then, parking will be excluded from that area?
It's a gravel area, not correct.
So it's currently a gravel area?
It's currently, yeah, it's been used. I don't know what historically they used it for as a type of probably employee parking when Skinner actually had a lot going on there. So that's existed for quite some time. And so we've noted that they're removing this asphalt, replacing it with gravel, and eliminating those parking spaces in that area. So that to your concern, we wouldn't be double dipping on that and creating a bunch of extra parking by doing this.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't, as long as you're meeting whatever our schedule of parking requirements are, then I don't have a concern with moving the parking around. Pam, any concerns from you?
No, it seems odd to have it off a round. It looks like a roundabout there.
Yeah, so the site, if you've ever been up there, there's a lot of ledge on the site, and that turnaround area is essentially going around a pretty substantial knob of ledge. So that was a lot of the considerations that went into that. And in the initial discussions with the board, modifying that turnaround so that a larger vehicle could effectively use it, that was something that we worked with. That's completely preserved in this case, though. We aren't changing any of that. So I agree. Oh, go ahead.
Is it a one-way flow of traffic, and what's the width of that aisle?
So that is unchanged. It's a 24 width
Okay.
aisle, and it's unchanged from what was previously approved.
I'm sorry, I haven't been up there to see what that condition is like.
Can
Does
you
that,
bring the picture back up again?
Yeah, I'd be
So-
happy to.
does that large boulder affect the line of sight at all? Will the people backing out of those spaces be able to see oncoming traffic approaching from this, what's, I think, Plan South, I guess?
Let me bring that up and I will zoom in for you.
I think it's good to check because
So the actual entrance to the site, it has one direction entrances and exits onto Main Street. You go up a hill and then we have a 24-foot aisle that gets you around the ledge, which is labeled here. And that goes to the previously approved parking area here. And the handicap spaces are unchanged as well. Those are directly next to the building. So this is the change that we're discussing right here.
Hmm.
And so the existing island in there, is that ledge sticking up above the ground, or is that just?
It's quite a bit up above the ground. Yep.
I haven't been up there for a while.
I'd say it probably, guessing it projects about 3 feet up. The site distances in this area, they really weren't anything that it came up as a concern before, because the actual entrance and exit to the site is quite a bit south. This is strictly parking for the limited use of the building.
they don't.
I mean,
they
it's
don't
24 feet wide, which is
for it.
extremely wide for a
Yeah,
turnaround
in
there.
theory, it would provide a full backing width without a customer actually having to use the aisle
That's a long
or the
time.
turnaround, excuse me.
It's one way around that.
I mean, 24 feet would be sufficient for 2 ways if they needed to, but the way the site's laid out, it naturally, you would come in here and park, or you could go up and park in front of the building.
Well, I guess that's the question. So what is the flow of traffic? Do you expect if someone parks there, are they then gonna back out and go around that turnaround to come back?
No,
out
the
again, or
the
just-
the turnaround is primarily to provide access to the working side of the site.
Okay.
They have some storage areas associated with the nature of their business.
So those additional spaces are not necessarily for everyday customer use?
Computers up
They
and
are,
running.
they are not. His thought was because there's already pavement there, he might as well take advantage of using that area instead of having people have to park back behind the building if it were ever to come up.
Do we know what is the schedule of park? I'm not even sure what this building falls under for what the schedule of parking.
So that's unchanged from the approved plan. So we have an office and a showroom is the way it's designated into.
Oh, I see.
I mean, it's a big building, but pools are obviously a big item too, so they take up a lot of space.
Again, I think that the 24 feet is wide enough that I'm not super concerned about it, but I don't know, Pam, if you think we should take a look at it, or
I'd feel more comfortable just to check out the line of sight, since the cars will be backing into the travel lane.
yeah, we can do that.
Would you like to set up a
Wait,
time to meet there
what-
then?
Why travel lane? I mean, it's just a parking lot. It's not going into the road.
But there's a big I don't know what the extent of the boulder is in the roundabout or what the line of sight is for cars backing in and out of the parking spaces. So it's the travel, the flow of traffic will go around there for the,
Mhm.
I
for
hear your
use of the
concern, but
site.
I think just the limited use of the site, this is not a scenario where you're having like a lot of vehicles. It's not like Country Covered where there's vehicles constantly coming and going. This is business hours only, limited.
Do you,
visitors
do you
to the-
even need those 6 spaces? Or is that just,
The applicant would like to, so I
oh, okay.
guess it's kind of a define the need. I mean,
Well, I didn't know if you were putting those spaces just to meet
Meet the,
the
yeah.
bylaw, like, cause I don't really care. I mean, I understand your nature of your business.
no, so we met the bylaw. And so this is just a swap from the parking on another portion of the site to the front portion of the site. So we eliminated them in the back and we moved them to the front.
But you need them, or you're just using it to meet the bylaw?
So the original plan with the parking in the back still met the bylaw with the exact same number of spaces. This is not a scenario where there's a requirement to have them there for whatever primary use of the building is, whether it's office or showroom. Did that answer your question?
What I'm saying is you don't necessarily need them. They're there to meet the bylaw. So like, I don't know if there was a way that we could, reduce the number.
Reduce the number of spaces?
If you don't want them, is all I'm saying.
Oh,
just
I mean,
easier.
yeah, I don't think, unfortunately, that there was a lot of discussion in the initial permitting, if it actually needed to have this many spaces. And so we were obligated to designate as many spaces as was required here. Now, to your question, does the site actually, I don't anticipate it fully utilizing all the parking spaces in the scenario where there's everybody coming up and parking in front of the building. There is equipment storage barns on the site for their actual work vehicles and things like that. So that you're not going to see that type of equipment parked there. This is just a scenario where they're doing the work and the applicant felt that if he's going to put in all this work on there and there's already existing pavement, if he had the opportunity to relocate some of these, he would be happy to do so.
Yeah, I was just trying to make your life easy, So,
I
Well,
know, I
Eric, I mean-
appreciate that. It's more of a the applicant's desire than out of a necessity from a planning standpoint.
okay, great. That's all I wanted to know.
Hey,
Yeah, I mean,
Pam,
you'd have to go
is
to
your
ZBA to-
question,
Go ahead.
is your question about the sight line for those 6 spaces around the existing or over the existing island?
Yes,
So can we simply take a look at that and make sure that if somebody backing out of one of those 6 spaces is going to be able to see somebody coming either way around that island, and that ends the discussion?
hmm
So does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And so Seth, we can work with you to set up a time to take a look at those.
Yeah, should I
If-
coordinate that with Pam during business hours?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And we'll be happy to do that. So I appreciate your consideration of it. I will let the applicant know, and I will be in touch with Pam tomorrow then.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Okay. Thanks, Seth.
Have a great evening.
You too.
thank you.
Okay. Next item, special permit for Warner Ave. And this is just an update on something that was submitted, I believe, Pam.
Yeah, we received we discussed it a few meetings ago. We received a special permit requesting a special permit for the creation of 2 backland lots. And I had questioned whether you could create 2 or not, but I'll show you the plan just so we can clearly understand what's being discussed. A lot of the frontage was located. Sorry. Just give 1 second. Okay. So this is the A&R that went along with the special permit. And you can see that the town line, which breaks up Bolton and Harvard, runs through the property. All of the frontage for the 200 feet of the lot is located in Harvard, and then there are two backland lots, one which has 50 feet of frontage for the backland lot completely in Harvard, and then lot 2 has about half in Harvard and half in Bolton. So I reached out to town council and questioned whether this would qualify for a special permit, and it actually didn't, because the frontage isn't located within a public way that was approved in the town of Bolton. So the applicant has submitted a letter requesting to withdraw his special permit application without prejudice.
Yeah. That is a crazy parcel.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, how does this happen? Is it because they A&R the other lots somehow?
I'm not really sure of the history. I didn't look into how the main lot was created. I just questioned the legitimacy of the backland lots.
Does this go back to like 1780 or something like that?
I don't know.
But okay, so the bottom line is, so they're withdrawing their special permit request. Do you need us to do anything?
I would like the
At this
board
point-
to vote that you acknowledge that they've submitted a request to withdraw without prejudice and approve that request.
Okay, I will make a motion to acknowledge that the owner has submitted a request to withdraw without prejudice and to approve that request.
Second,
Michael Gore,
Aye.
James Barr,
Aye.
Bob Romer,
aye,
Eric Nyland,
Hey,
Michael Lau.
Aye.
And this was the one that we might want to improve the wording on the backland lot thing, because it was unclear to me, I think it was unclear to Pam, whether you could actually, so if all that frontage had been in Bolton, apparently you can have two backland lots like that, but the wording of the bylaws pretty unclear, or it's not very clear, to put it that way. So I don't know if that's something that we would want to modify at all. I don't know, Pam, maybe we could ask town council if that.
Yeah, we could certainly come up with a better definition. I don't know if the board wants to wait. This is one of the bylaws that Randall Arnett,
Oh, right.
excuse me, is reviewing as part of our land planning grant. So he may come up with some recommendations to alter how the bylaw is currently, so we may end up altering it again. So I don't know if you want to
Okay.
go through
yeah.
that process first, so we don't amend the same
Yep.
bylaw twice.
No, definitely a good idea. But yeah, okay, we'll just kind of keep a note for that. Okay. Next item is Century Mill Estates, estimate of completion. Okay, and I think we've got a couple residents on with us. So, what we kind of wanted to talk about tonight was ways that we can, some of the options for moving forward at this point. And so, I've worked with Pam, we've talked with town administrator, and there's kind of three options that I see that we could do. Okay, option one is the town can help facilitate the work through the process of a betterment. And I think we talked about that in one of the previous meetings. And a betterment is essentially the town facilitates the work and then assesses the cost of the work onto the residents of the subdivision. So there's a whole process to doing the betterment that we'll get into, and we can explain sort of what the process is. As of today, the town actually can't do a betterment. We don't have a bylaw that allows us to do it. So that would be the first step, is to pass a bylaw. The second option is that the residents can do the work themselves. Through their HOA, they could hire someone to manage the project and do the work based on the requirements from the DPW document. And then the third option is the road just remains a private road. And so the residents continue to be responsible for snow removal and upkeep of the road. So those are the three options that we sort of have at this point. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about the betterment. And so this comes to kind of the cost estimate that we worked with Niche to do. And so I was hesitant to send out Niche's report. We went back and forth with them a number of times. And essentially what we asked Niche to do was put together a cost estimate for what it would take for not the town of Bolton, but someone to completely manage out the project of doing the work on those roads. And after a number of back and forths with Niche, they came back at an estimate of just over $1 million, which seems awfully high to me. There's a couple reasons for that. One of the biggest ones is they included a line item of just over $200,000 to basically locate the water infrastructure. And they included that because they're not sure if they have, I guess special marking tape or magnetic tape that they install on water lines to help identify where it was. They don't have as-built plans for the water system, so they couldn't say if those exist or not. So that was a big one. They included a line item of $100,000 for easements, which again, lawyers are expensive, but that seems very expensive. A lot of contingency, so a 30% contingency fee in case something went wrong during construction or we found other issues during the construction. A couple items for 1 and 2 year inflation. And then one of the biggest things is that when the town facilitates the work, we have to pay something called prevailing wage. And basically the town has to pay kind of a minimum wage for doing the work that a private developer doesn't have to pay. And so that automatically boosts the cost of any construction project that the town takes on. And so you add all those up and they come to a price tag of just over $1 million. Now, again, I don't know that may not necessarily be the final cost. It may be worst case cost, but so that's where we come up with that number. And I can send out that report later on. The process for doing a betterment, as I said, requires the town to pass a bylaw to allow the town to do that sort of work on a private infrastructure. And if that passes, we would need another town meeting article to actually appropriate the funds with the intent that they would be recouped through taxation. And then furthermore, the residents of the subdivision have to, I believe the term is petition the select board for this. And it requires a 50% plus one majority of all the residents of the development. Pam, do I have that kind of?
You covered it all, Mike. Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
All right. So to the board or to the residents, mainly to the residents, do you guys have questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Pam.
I think just one of the things we didn't discuss is that we have to send this cost estimate out certified to the developer to allow completion of the developer to allow him time with a deadline to complete the work before we take action. So we can prove that there's no effort on his part to bring the subdivision up to public way standards.
Can I ask a question about the water portion of this? Like, I know that there's the public wells there. I always thought that was part of the as-built, because that would be something that the town would have to take over anyway. Is that wasn't part of the as-built?
The town will not take over the water infrastructure.
Oh, they won't. So then what is that whole line item about from Niche?
So basically, I mean, think of it in terms of this way. You're going to have privately owned water infrastructure crisscrossing a publicly owned street. right? So if the town has to come and do construction somewhere, they need to know where all the infrastructure is, so they don't dig and,
So kind of safe dig type thing or
yeah,
whatever.
like they break a pipe or things like
So
that.
that's not documented anywhere?
So I don't have it. We don't have it. When the developer did this, they had to work with Mass DEP to, say, hey, this is the public water supply. Pam's verified that they send yearly reports where they need to. But as far as like where the infrastructure is located, we don't have that on the as-bills.
Mike,
But
are
that
there
was-
design drawings that show that?
So I mean, this may exist, like there may be an as-built for the water plans. We just don't have it, right? I
Okay.
mean, I don't think we would have reviewed that necessarily. I mean, again, that's all way before my time on the board, but because we were never intending to own the water infrastructure, I don't know that we would have reviewed that.
So going back to the numbers, I mean, if you, first of all, talk about $1 million, and then you back out the 30% contingency, that's 30% above roughly 750,000. And then two major line items are 100,000 and 200,000, which gets you down to, between 400,000 and 600,000 in reality, base cost. Does the contingency take into consideration escalation?
There is inflation as a separate line item.
Okay, so it doesn't.
Yeah, no.
So realistically,
doesn't take that in.
yeah, base estimate, we're talking, I don't know, 500,000-600,000 maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that seems kind of more of a realistic number, but I can't say that for sure, just,
Yeah.
Especially based on not knowing the water part of it.
But that's, pretty significant difference from
Yeah.
$1 million.
Yeah, you can set the amount, like Mike said, it has to go to town meeting warrant, so you can set it higher than what you need, but you can't raise it above what you asked for, if that makes sense.
Okay, so that was based on prevailing wages, right?
Yes.
Everything's
based
based
on
on prevailing wage. And
Yeah,
Mitch
so
wasn't
because-
able to give us a breakdown of what the cost would be without prevailing wage.
No, I understand that. But it would be probably significantly less.
I agree. Which is, kind of why we bring up option 2 is like, where the HOA or the residents contract out the work themselves. I mean, they'd be able to do it significantly cheaper. But again, I'm just trying to present, what I think realistic options for moving forward are.
No, I'm just thinking about the relative cost at this point to the residents, if they were gonna pay an improvement for X number of years in their taxes, based on prevailing wages, versus, pretty much paying for it on a private basis, there may be a very significant difference.
Yeah, and when it comes to so the town would have a lot of flexibility in how the assessment was made, basically how many years it was, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, something like that. And the assessment would only start after the work was all completed. So you would have an accurate cost for what things were that would be assessed.
Okay, but I would assume that the assessments, whatever period they were gonna be imposed, would also take into consideration the cost of money.
There's a method to add
2%.
to use a certain percentage over what the town has to borrow it at.
Right,
Right. So I mean, we would borrow it at a fixed rate, and then the assessment would be made slightly above that.
okay.
My-
Mike, Vince LaRosa, 73 Old Stone. Hey, so thank you for presenting the options and thank you for getting us the report sometime following the meeting. So I guess Eric asked my first question. I'm very surprised that there's, not $200,000 worth of as built out there somewhere. So hopefully we can locate that. My question would be, you mentioned 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. That would obviously be a big player to decide if we're looking to vote within the community, right? We have a lot of residents that have already spent a lot of tax dollars and haven't gotten the plowing. If we have to pay it over 5 years, those that are moving in 10 years are really benefiting quite a bit. So that's gonna really, how would we, how would we get a little bit more defined before we would put it to a vote?
So that's a good question. I'm not sure who sets that time frame. We could probably get an answer to that. I mean, I think
Okay.
it's up to the town.
I think it gets set during the Warren article when you set the authorization to borrow the money.
Yeah, because it's not part of the bylaw. So yeah,
But we can confirm that.
Yeah,
Okay.
the other thing is, I mean, it's like a lien on the house. So even if if it were a 20-year assessment, and you moved out after a year, whoever came in, afterwards picks up that lien.
Oh, sure. Sure.
And it was also noted that a resident would have the ability to pay it off immediately if they want to, right? So it's, it would be your choice to do that. It doesn't have to stay assessed on the full time.
Right. I'm thinking more leaning towards, the benefit would be over 20 years. So you might have,
Yeah, but I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
Sorry, this is John Ballows from 21 Cider Circle. We're talking, if we're believing this estimate is accurate, let's just start with that, then we're talking nearly $25,000 per family. Right? That's far from insignificant. We're talking over $1,000 a year if you're going over 20 years. That alone against the value of your house is going to crumble your resale value if you don't just throw 25 grand out the window to try to do this. So I think it's a very poor option. I appreciate the looking into what the options are. Obviously, we're just ignoring the liability of the builder here, but we're also ignoring the liability of the town. So I think we'd like to see the report. I'd be astonished if the town didn't have responsibility for approving the building of water supplies and how it was delivered, whether it's DEP or town. There's oversight, both with anything that was built in this neighborhood. There should be oversight. I'm not saying it's the town or DEP or who it is, but to say there's a $200,000 line item because we don't know where the water lines are sounds like a failure by somebody.
So
Not
again, the
that
line
shouldn't
item
be
is
owned by the.
so John,
resident.
hold on a second. The line item is to install a locating tape on the stuff. I think there are plans where the stuff is, but they need some sort of marking on them. And we just don't know whether that was done or not.
Right.
That-
I mean,
that's
if it's
what the
there,
line
it's
item
there.
is.
I mean, when it was built, I guess I don't know the process. I'm not a builder. I know nothing about civil engineering. But if things were failed along the path to not be documented or to be approved to be done and not done properly, most likely is on the builder. But it's frustrating to believe that a $20,000 cost will be given to the residents because of a lot of these line items. And I think I just want to understand what those items are, who should have had oversight for each item to not be on this report, because I questioned the DPW's report when we started. And I'm not sure if that was reviewed as every item was legitimate, because I didn't understand half the stuff. And I think part of that review, I think you said you didn't understand it fully. And that part of the review from Niche would be talking to the DPW director and understanding what each line item actually meant. And determining if they were really valid for road acceptance. Because if the town's responsible to hold the bond, there's no chance you're holding $1 million, even if you weren't giving money to Andy to pave the road. It was 20,000 here, 20,000 there. the town was supposed to hold a bond that would be able to complete this so the residents aren't holding the bag. And if we're saying it's $1 million short right now, there's some oversight problems. I don't know. I'm not trying to blame the town right now. I'm just saying, if we're $1 million short, I was not expecting anywhere near this number. I was expecting 50,000, 100,000, maybe 200,000. $1 million? I can't even believe that the town even took anywhere close to $1 million in bond from Andy. And so to say that the town is saying that the residents have to take $1 million worth of responsibility for something, it doesn't seem proper. And that's in my mind, that's just a trigger for us to hire a legal counsel. And figure out-
This is Kai. Can I speak? This is Kai Trong.
Yeah,
I've been
one
waiting.
second.
John, I totally agree with you.
Kai,
I
Kai,
am
hang on 1 second.
flabbergasted by what I'm hearing. Many of us been on this call for years. Michael, you've been on this call for years. And last month we were talking about special warrant, and I cannot believe you guys can put out a $1 million price tag. And I totally agree with John Balowitz. The place I would start is, I dispute all these things that you guys now say that need to be done when you had years to all along the way to make sure it's done correctly. So I mean, we only have 3 residents. We don't have enough people to vote yay or nay. But personally, I would vote for taking legal action because I think this is garbage. You would react the same way if you were in our position, having been through this process for 10 years, waiting for the road speed to be accepted, paying the property taxes all this time. I just think this is very, very unreasonable. So I think John and Vince are much nicer. I'm not. I am completely flabbergasted by this is where you guys are presenting us with. How can you ask us to pay the $1 million to fix the roads that somebody working for the town, who may no longer be there, but working for the town, approved along the way? And that's where I would start. So we're going to make this process more excruciating for all of us involved, because now you've changed where the goalpost is.
We have not changed the goalpost.
Yes,
ever.
you are. You
No.
are.
No,
We have documented records of prior administration accepting the roads, right? Or
no,
accepting
absolutely,
conditions
absolutely
that.
not.
Yes, that's
Absolutely
true.
not. You do
Well,
not
I guess
have
that's
that.
that would be a legal process to feel. But Michael, you were on some of those emails. The DPW director, who was prior to the current administration, right, met with the developer and provided feedback. Developer fixed the roads. And so how can, I don't get it. How can you come here now and say, I've seen the previous list, 50% of the driveways have to be fixed and rebuilt. So are you saying that no, town has no culpability? This is all on a developer, all on the residents. That all this construction is going on for 10 years, that you were not okay with it this entire time. Only now you say, well, now we need $1 million to fix it. That's completely nonsense. So if that's where you guys want to, if this is the line you want to force, again, I'm only one homeowner here, but I'm going to do my damnedest to push for legal action because I think this is completely ludicrous. That's it.
I mean, I agree with the residents here. I understand the prevailing wage, and I understand, it costs more for the town to do it versus private, and whatever that should be included. But I don't understand why there's new line items this is the first I've ever heard of that. It wasn't bonded. Huh?
What are the new line items?
Like taping out the water. That was never a part of accepting the road. I don't understand why all of a sudden it's part of it now.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot of questions around that one line item, and that work may already be done. We just don't have the documentation for it.
Yeah, so I think we definitely need to. I maybe got the list sent an email. I'm not sure, but
we haven't sent it out yet. We'll send it out after the meeting.
Yeah, I think we have to go through that and really debate it and whittle down what's the absolute bare minimum to get this through, because Like that was never there before, and I don't see why it would be there now. And if it's some new regulatory thing that's there now, I would assume that, you know, it's already grandfathered in the way it is. So yeah, that number to me is crazy. So I think just as a board, we need
Well,
to work on that.
Eric,
I need a great deal more specificity before I say anything like that. And I guess one of the questions I have about the as-built for the water is, what is the rationale for the as-built, or are there other approaches? Having been in the business of digging a lot of holes in very, very critical, highly contaminated areas, there are a number of procedures given design drawings and care that you can work around that, and maybe that needs to be looked at. But I think before we rush into this, you know, I understand what the estimate is and what the three options are, but I think we need considerably more discussion and refinement and understanding of what those are, particularly as we look at option 2, and get away from prevailing wage and come up with procedures that can mitigate the risk of having detailed as-built and taping. I assume the electrical lines were taped, but in addition to that, the water line. So before we get really excited, let's be very specific about what we are getting excited about.
Mike, I just like to finish my statement real quick. And Robert, thank you. I think that's really well said. I'm with Eric here. Like even if Andy was still here and he was the easiest man to work with, hypothetically, I'd still be as shocked that a $200,000 line item. I mean, this is. I'm with John. I mean, I was really thinking we were talking about $50,000. I mean, this is kind of out of left field, and I'm not going to get upset. This because it's. I mean, I almost want to laugh. Like this is not anything even slightly close to what we were even considering under the realm of possibilities. So my request would be to second what Robert just said, and I'd really like a lot more detail as to this number's nowhere close. I think Andy, even if he was working with us, he'd be blown away by it just as much as we are as residents right now.
Well, I think, going back with my background, I think you need to go back to the functional requirement. Why are we doing this? Certainly we have regulations. As-built are a very important element of this, but as-built, for instance, for a public water supply distribution lines has a very different nuance to them. And why do we want to know that? I think we understand why we want to know that. We don't want to disrupt that. We don't want to run into health issues during excavation, et cetera, et cetera. But why don't we go back and then, have a conversation with the DPW about going through a process that takes another tack and may cost very, very little, and maybe not, but may cost very little with some appropriate procedures put in place.
And I mean, you're just talking about the water
Yeah,
line.
Yeah,
I mean, like everyone should have seen the DPW's report. Like again, as people said, I'm not a civil engineer, but the things that were pointed out in the DPW's report, like that man represents the town. Like what he said needs to be done, needs to be done. What we asked Niche to do was put cost items to that, and that's what they did.
Can we get the old DPW director back? I mean, it's a single point of failure, right? It's a single person's opinion. I get it that he's the hired help here, and he's the person.
John,
but
can you just stop for a second? Okay. Here's what I'm going to say that has never happened in this development is the DPW director has never gone out and done the full inspection like what our current director did. Okay, we were never at the point where we were that close to road acceptance where the DPW director went out and walked through it. Prior to that, town planners went through and had punch list items about things, but we never had a fully comprehensive report about what was left to do. Okay.
I believe the DPW director was part of the discussion when Erica came up with her punch list previously. I get it wasn't a full inspection, but the 25 item punch list is,
It's a full
is
inspection. Like,
I'm
I
not
don't know
saying
what.
I'm not saying it is, but it's fine. So I agree with what Eric and Bob said. I'm fine to wait. You know, $100,000 in moving easements. I'm baffled by too, because I thought Andy just had to sign over
They
easements.
came up with that number. That's the number they put. That's why I wanted to have this discussion rather than just send out the report.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the discussion. Like I said, we'll wait and see some more thorough investigation on what's actually accurate and what's not, and see where we go from here. Because I would like to get some more insight on what these items are, I guess. So anyhow, I mean, it's just, yeah, I don't really have much more to say. I agree. I do appreciate taking the time to look at it, Mike. I think you can appreciate that the shock of the number to the residents.
Yep, totally shocked. But again, like when you look at it, like if you compare what was called out in the DPW report as to line items on here, it's probably more in the $400,000. That's probably the number that I was expecting. Like at $50,000, like no way. Like you can't get your driveway paved for 50 grand probably. So there's we want to be realistic about what it is. Now, we can engage DPW and try to get better numbers on these things. But here's the other problem is there's no money left to pay Niche or any other consultant to do this work at this point. Right? Like we exhausted the 1,500. So to move forward, I mean, we can try to find, again, we can have DPW spend some time on this, but they may come back and say, yep, looks accurate.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know. I mean, it's probably you'll think this is not a fair assessment, but I've found the current DPW director to be very difficult and countering the previous DPW's position on a lot of things. And like we can go back to the light issue. It's such a silly thing, but fought so long for a light that was approved. It's just silly. So I think this DPW director has a different level of detail that he wants to push that it wasn't there before, and it's creating some things that may not be required. And that's just my position based on our interaction over the course of the last 2 years.
Pam, can you?
So I question his reports, to be honest. I question if everything he says actually is reality and actually is needed.
Pam, do you mind investigating what we have on records for the water infrastructure? And
Yeah, I've gotten through about half of the inspection reports, but I haven't come across any evidence that tape's out there, but I wouldn't think it's too difficult to prove with a metal detector that they utilize to locate the water lines.
But like, is this tapes thing, again, I'm not a civil engineer, but is that something that's a new regulatory? Is it something that wasn't
No.
installed?
It's standard practice to put a metal tape. It's blue in color. They run it along the top of the water line. So you can locate where the actual location of the water line. So when you have to excavate or repave in the future or repair a water line, you know exactly where it is.
So presumably it's already there as long as they did it to code within the past 20 years or something.
Yeah, it should be there.
So that should be a quick verification then, right?
I don't think we have the equipment to verify it. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want
So
to
we have
belabor it.
to,
I just want to make sure, like the residents, we're not moving the goalposts on the residents. I know, Mike.
I
You
think
said we
that was
weren't,
the,
but
I think
right.
that niche was conservative because if we do have to set an amount to do repairs to bring them up to standard, we can't underestimate what's needed. So it probably is on the higher side.
Right, but if they were put into code when they were put in and the code changed and the
No,
question is,
That's not the case.
that's-
Though.
That's not the
No, the
case.
code hasn't changed.
And if we wouldn't hold a subdivision that was approved 10 years ago to that standard. I think some of it now is lack of maintenance over the years. So things that maybe were done correctly at one time need to be redone or repaired, just particularly in relation to the stormwater system. So those are types of things that just lack of maintenance has. You're muted, Eric. I'm sorry. I can't hear you.
I guess just I would like to understand what is currently there, and you're gonna go look at that. And then, you know, this has never been brought up before, so like, I don't know, we just keep seemingly adding things on, and it doesn't seem right. So I
I
don't know.
don't, okay, yeah, I can't really speak to that, but I do know that the magnetic tape is pretty standard practice with the installation of water lines, so it should be there.
Okay,
So
well,
Tim, that
let's
would be
find that out.
something that would be inspected by the town or DEP when it's installed, right?
It should
it's
be,
standard.
yes.
So there's some culpability by whoever should have inspected it.
I can't speak to who I have inspection records. I haven't found any in relation to installation of the water line, so I'm still
Okay.
going
Yeah,
through all the
I just want to
records.
understand, you said it's standard practice, so everything in this development should have been approved and inspected when it's done, just like any home would be inspected. So that I just want to be clear on that. So thank you.
I had a couple questions if you guys don't mind.
Good, Mike.
I just kind of running through the numbers that you listed off. I haven't seen the estimate, but I do it for a living and I'm not that shocked. When I read the report, I just wanted to note that it seems like a lot of the cost is related to the public, what was installed as a public water supply, whether it's the easements, the searching for the public water supply that as-built aren't sufficient to develop those easements, and then even some other things. So when we add that stuff up, it's from what you said, Michael, is hundreds of thousands of the estimate. You can install a lot of wells for hundreds of thousands of dollars that would eliminate the public water supply potentially. And it seems like a lot of the issues, like I just went back through the report as we were going over this. These driveway issues are not. I don't know that it's a lot of the estimate. It doesn't look to be big.
No. No, those are actually pretty small.
So it's like the roadway, when we're talking about transfer of ownership to the town, that it seems like a big chunk of the issue is the public water supply, not so much the drainage stuff. And as far as the town goes, that stuff, the public water supply stuff, if we went with option 2 that you mentioned, the town's not requiring them to upgrade the water supply. It only seems like we're only requesting that if we were to take ownership of it, because we would need to know the locations of it. But if option 2 is gone, a lot of that cost wouldn't be necessary. The town wouldn't be requiring it, correct? Is there anything on this bulk DPW report that we would want done if it weren't taking, like, is there anything deficient to the public safety or required to be done if we were not being asked to take over the road?
I'm not sure I follow your question. Option 2 would be they pay for the work to bring it up to road acceptance level. Right.
But we're not requiring that work except for to take ownership of the road. If it weren't for being requested to take ownership of the road,
I mean that's
public water
3,
supplies,
right?
Like you said, they're submitting the reports, and as far as the town is concerned, we don't have any concerns at this time for doing that work. It's all optional to take over the road.
Yes.
Is there anything on the report that would need to be done even if we didn't take over the road? Like, there's nothing. The report is seemingly completely related to taking over the road.
Correct. That's this whole process. I mean, they are a
Is it
private road.
option-
They could continue to be a private road.
So option 2 is
option.
$0 with the exception of plowing.
That's option 3.
No, I'm saying option 2 would be, there would be no work being
Option
required
2, option 2, they only do the work. They pay for the work if they want
to get it accepted, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry, yeah, right.
The difference being that
Okay.
that they pay much less.
Right. Yeah, they
Yeah,
can
what-
elect what to do and what not to do.
No,
I mean,
they can't. They still need to do the things that are in the DPW report.
to
Right,
get
the DPW report says this is how you get to road acceptance.
I
That's what that
think
report
I understand. Yeah. And then the second question I had, because I wasn't here when this thing all went through. Do we know when it was decided to go to a public shared water supply rather than just individual wells at the homes?
I think at the very beginning of it.
Day 1.
Yeah, which is the basis of the problem that because you wanted to fit more lots in the neighborhood. If we didn't do that, we would have had an acre and a half and probably 15 less lots for the developer, and it would be not the problem, unfortunately.
I understand. Okay,
Can we,
thank you.
But I mean, I did the math. I mean, we're talking the payback is almost 40 years if the neighborhood has to pony up $1 million to versus the cost of just plowing. Yeah, that's crazy. It's a crazy number. So, anyways, I'm not gonna dwell on it. We'll figure out what the options are. I think there's some work to do. What Eric and Bob said, I appreciate, and Mike, I appreciate you as well. I just want to understand it and figure out what our options are, because
Yeah.
I'm certain that's
I-
the option of us funding
I
$1
know
million.
it's, I know it's frustrating.
it.
I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
beyond frustrating, right?
Yeah.
But again,
Mike, can I-
will, go ahead, Bob.
no, I wasn't involved in the beginning. I haven't been involved in much of the process, but
Join the club.
I'm kind of interested in why we, not that we don't need to, but why we need to know about the as-built condition of the public water supply. And that, in my mind, pops up two questions. One is, it's an excavation issue. If the town is doing work on the roads and they run into a public water supply line, then we got a serious issue. And secondly, if there's a big question about whether it was taped or not, what is it going to take somebody out there and find out if in fact there's tape on top of those? I suspect it's not going to cost a great deal of money, and that would eliminate the whole issue. That and an appropriate excavation procedure would very much solve that entire problem. And it's a big piece of change in this.
So I agree. I mean, it's 200,000 plus. You're still at 800,000.
Yeah, well,
I don't think it doesn't sound like that's going to be palatable to everyone. If that
yeah, but
issue
you
goes
throw
away.
in contingency, you throw in
Yep.
prevailing
Yep.
wages, a whole lot of stuff disappears. For option two, option one.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Well, the sidewalk issue would disappear as well because the tape accounts the estimates in inches bond prevailing wage estimate for the completion of work. It includes the replacement of sidewalks because the water lines are under the sidewalks in the way. So if they had to dig them up to locate the water lines, then they also included an estimate for replacing all the sidewalks. So that would go away as well.
I'm
Well,
sorry, Pam, that's
in my
confusing me.
past
So
life, I
we
wouldn't
know
be
the
finding
water
things
lines are
digging
under the
over.
sidewalks, but we don't know where the water lines are.
And
sorry.
not throughout the entire subdivision, but on the design plans, there's a good portion of them that are located under the sidewalk. So they included an estimate to replace the sidewalks.
Okay, so there is some documentation where the lines are. Okay,
But we have the design plans. We don't have the as-built construction plans.
gotcha. I got you. I got you. Sorry, I didn't understand the difference.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Nope. Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. But
No, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
all right. Take care. All right. Town planner report. Pam, you want to go ahead?
Yep. So the land planning grant, the town administrator is finalizing the scope of work and contracts. All our current bylaws and regulations have been forwarded to the consultant. And I believe he'll have, or has, we'll have a report on that we can put on the agenda for the November 8th meeting.
Yeah, he sent it to me and he's really enthusiastic about the board reviewing it. Can I simply send that out at this point, Pam, informally?
No, I wouldn't. He hasn't communicated it to the town and we don't have a signed contract to proceed yet, so
Okay, that's
he
fine.
really shouldn't have sent that
You
to
shouldn't
you
have
at
sent
this.
it to me in the first place, but that's all
Right.
right. Of course, I set up the scope of work with him.
Can I ask a question, just like in sending things out ahead of time? Did you guys just get that estimate from Niche today? Or was there a reason
No.
why you didn't send it to the whole
No,
board?
so as I explained in the meeting, so residents have been asking me for that report. We've
Mhm.
had the report revised 2 or 3 times with Niche, going back and forth with them about things.
Mhm.
And then including this, the most recent one was, you know, the sidewalks and the water supply, right? So I didn't want to just send that out to everyone beforehand without
Mhm.
giving the context of the meeting.
Yeah, it's hard to.
I understand.
Have a discussion when you don't even see the information in front of you.
Yep, I totally understand.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna put that on the agenda for November 8th, the land planning grant. And then 500 Main Street is a proposal for a redevelopment of property. The property owner gave a preliminary presentation to the Board of Selectmen. They're proposing a warehouse with an abutting 55 and over development consisting of 24 attached townhome style units that have access off of Hudson Street. The warehouse has access off of Main Street. They also requested that the town submit a MassWorks grant to support the addition of a stoplight at Hudson Street. The Board of Selectmen heard it. They suggested that they speak to the planning board, at least in a preliminary scope, to present the project. It does have some zoning issues, so it may need to go to town meeting for a zoning revision. And they'd like to come before the board just to present the preliminary design.
So-
I was just gonna say that selectmen's meeting I watched, it's pretty informative. So if anybody on the board hasn't seen it, I would advise you go watch it.
They discuss traffic at a
thing to
great
us?
deal.
Oh, sorry, Mike, you were quiet for a minute.
Oh, sorry, are they just gonna present the same thing to us, do you know, Pam? Or is this
Ye-
something different?
They're gonna present pretty much the same thing to
Okay.
you. Their traffic engineers planning to attend the meeting as well.
Yeah, maybe we need to look at the effects of a similar facility on Route 70.
I mean, the main thing they need from the planning board is we don't allow warehouses in that district, right? So we would have to add warehouse to the business zone table of uses. Whereas we do allow warehouse and industrial, which would be the Paragon in Cobham, but we don't allow it in that district. So that's what they need to come before us, right? Pam?
Yeah, and I just think it's very preliminary in scope right now, so I think in terms of the site plans themselves, I think they're looking for a feel from the town as to whether this development would even receive support. And I think if they get a no, they would probably not pursue the proposal that they're thinking about.
I had a question too, because they were talking about an over 55 townhouse style development,
Mhm.
which actually I'm all for in general. But now that we don't have like we don't need 40B, our 40B is full, and that particular type of development isn't really. We tried to do a cottage overlay a few years ago. Like I didn't know how that fell into our current bylaws, that over 55.
I think they can still do a 40B.
Mhm.
So just because we meet our 10% doesn't mean we can't do a locally supported for chapter 40B filing.
Got it. I got
So
it.
that, I think that would be part of it as well. It's just that if the project were denied, it wouldn't go through the expedited land court process. It would have to go through the regular appeal process. So people tend to not do that route if communities are at their 10% affordability threshold.
Right, because we're more in control at that point.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So all traffic to the warehousing facility would be off 117?
Yeah. They were talking about a rotary where the current ramp comes off of the highway. They were talking about putting a rotary there. And like, that's one thing Stan was asking about, was I thought we were, because they did talk about its own ramp on the highway, but I guess because it's too close to the current ramp that wouldn't be allowed. So they wanted to basically redesign the ramp coming off the highway by putting like a rotary there.
Wow,
That's-
traffic will be back in front of my house in no time at all.
Yeah, so.
I can bring up the site plans if you'd like. I just didn't have much prepared because it was kind of more of a warning.
Well, can you send them to us and let us peruse them?
Yeah, I provided a link in
Oh,
the
okay, I'm
update
sorry.
in the planning board update to the plans. They are posted on the selectmen's current projects portion of
Are
the
there any
webpage.
preliminary traffic estimates?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Did the select board seem receptive to it?
I
It
think they're
seemed-
willing to think about it. I don't know, Eric, did you get a position that they were pro or con? I think they just thought we're willing to hear more and go
It seemed neutral.
to other, yeah.
They
that's
they
what
weren't
I-
speak. They seemed neutral, but they seemed like especially like I know Stan was talking a lot. He wanted to get it in front of the planning board. It sounded like because nothing could happen without that rezoning. Yeah, they seemed neutral. That's all I could say.
Yeah, that's kind of the impression I got
Yeah.
as well, yeah.
And so it would be. So it would be a bylaw change to get to bring that use into the zoning. And then there's no other zoning changes on that parcel, is that correct? Is that the weird one where it's like split zoning on
It
it?
is split. The portion with the 55 and over, I think is residential. Let me bring it.
Yeah, that's on the corner of 85 and 117, where the lot is split. There's like a business zone. It's basically a square on 117 and 495, but then behind I guess the southern portion of that, between the Boy Scout camp and that lot is residential. So yeah, I don't know how, if they were talking about like 300,000 square foot facility. If so, I think our current the current bylaw allows for 20% coverage of the lot. So I think, I didn't do out the math, but I assume they did. So as long as the 300,000 square feet is 20% or less of the business zone portion, then we wouldn't need any change there. But I think the main thing is just to allow warehousing. And if that's something we want in that zone there.
And then is it special permit beyond that? Like, do we have to go through the special permit process for it?
Yeah. So yeah, it would be, the first thing would be a bylaw in front of the town asking to allow warehousing in the business zone. And then, like you said, then it would be a special permit.
Okay, right up front, my issue is traffic. I'm awe-inspired.
Yeah, I don't know if like this agenda item allows for opinions, but I mean, I'm not a fan of a warehouse right there in general, but we could
Oh,
save
I'm
it.
definitely a fan if you're gonna hear my opinions.
Yeah.
No, I'm interested in facts, but just on the face of it, putting a roundabout and adding that in is just amazing.
Amazing good, amazing terrible.
At the moment, let's see.
So this isn't showing, this isn't showing the roundabout, but I guess it shows the building. I mean, like, yeah, I don't know that. I don't know where the business zone line is. I assume it's somewhere in the back in the green. I don't know if you could zoom out a little bit, Pam.
No, they didn't put the zone line on the site plan.
Yeah. I was wondering if they were even under the 20%, which would, I guess, be another zoning change.
We
but-
don't even have enough info that
Right.
they've given us at this point to determine that.
Well, they gave the square footage of the facility, I thought, but yeah, like you said, it's pretty preliminary, so.
Yeah, but there's no lot lines. They kind of meshed it all into one and
Oh,
there's some
yeah.
wetlands on the property, so it's
Yeah, so you could see
it's-
that red square. Yeah, I guess you'd have to go to the GIS map, but the actual property goes further south. Where it's white, that's residential. And then there's like the gas station in the middle. It's kind of this other lots in the middle. So I don't know. I didn't see the map. They didn't have the map out.
So Pam, the current, okay, stop there. Can you go back? Right there. Oh,
Let me zoom out.
yeah, thank you. You know, so they're talking about access to the facility directly across from
Yeah,
the northbound entrance to 495,
yep,
across 117. And
Mhm.
therefore, there's going to be a light there and then a light approximately 1/10 of a mile to the west, right?
Yeah, they're proposing two.
Right, that's great.
well,
Pardon
and
my-
well, what they're proposing is at that intersection, they're proposing a roundabout,
Right.
so no light, I guess.
So we go through a roundabout and
Uh-huh.
then we go to a light. And if the light seizes up the roundabout, everything stops in all directions. I'm sorry, I spent a lot of time in the UK at Milton Keynes with exactly this configuration and spent a lot more time going to work than I should have.
I mean, it sounded, I mean, when I was listening, it sounded kind of disastrous personally. I mean, they were saying, well, there wasn't, most of the traffic would be at night. It wouldn't necessarily be, I mean, that's what they were saying. It's not necessarily on peak.
I mean,
But-
as bad as the traffic on 117 is, like since they reconfigured things as they are today, like so I mean I work in Marlboro, so I come up 495 north and get off the exit, and it's like it used to back up and you had to sit on 495 for a while, which was always terrifying to me as cars came
Yeah.
flying past you. But now with the dedicated lane, no merging, you know, you come off and when you go westbound on 117 from 495 north, it flows and you don't get backed up too much. Like, and that's the last thing I would ever want to see is that going back to getting backed up, because that was dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Anyway, we need more information as always.
Yep.
Uh,
And Pam, this is strictly an informational meeting, no hearing, no nothing, just they're gonna
No,
come and
they just
Oh.
want to get a preliminary feel, like I said, of the town's
Yeah.
opinion on the project overall, and if they should pursue some funding and further the design and petition for a zone change.
Yeah, I mean, because if the planning board isn't willing to sponsor this article, then they can't go forward.
Yeah, so it's an interesting
Well-
thought. We knew something was going to happen.
and a
They
use
can,
change.
go forward. You don't have to, they can petition it themselves or get
Yeah,
10
they could do,
voters to sign a petition, but
Yeah,
you
true.
give a negative recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah.
right, yeah, they could do a citizen, well, not, if they're not citizens, can they do a citizen's petition? How does that
Or
work?
if they own the property, they can petition.
Oh,
for a
yeah,
zone
yeah, right,
change.
that's true, yeah.
And Pam, is a use like I don't know, is it called a schedule change, a use change? Does that that's also a 2/3 vote, or is that a majority?
2/3 for the warehouse, depending on if we do anything for the housing. Housing only requires majority,
Okay.
depending on how it's written and what it consists of.
Yeah, I don't think, housing in itself, I think needs a little bit of traffic study. As somebody who not infrequently comes up Hudson Road and turns right with people trying to turn left. It backs up, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, diversity in housing, this townhouse over 50, whether it's even, I don't even know that it has to be over 55, because typically townhouses tend not to be families, they tend to be younger people and older people.
Or older people, right?
Yeah, younger or older people. I'd be all for this. I mean, we'd have to look at the traffic, but I can't imagine that this would add so much traffic to that intersection.
do one without the other?
I don't know, probably not.
I don't know that either. Yeah.
Okay, well,
They want to meet next week with staff before they meet with the planning board, so I can get a better feel about their options.
okay, and if they're gonna come up with another traffic configuration with more specificity, it'd be kind of nice to see that.
I thought they showed the roundabout further down.
They did. I just don't have those plans.
Oh,
okay.
I'll
so-
get them from the applicant.
you would love this, Bob. So the state also wanted at 85, they were requesting a roundabout there as well. So you'd have a roundabout, and then the light. So that'd be fun.
Wow, be reminding.
Yeah,
remind me of the
Mass
UK.
Highway, Mass Highway tip projects are all now requiring roundabouts in your design, and if you can't do them, you have to prove why. So it's one of their new design standards. Over the last few, not new, but over the last probably 3 or 4 years.
That would be an interesting concept. I just have to learn about going around them with right-hand drive. Sorry.
I'm very curious to see how the roundabout at the high school is gonna work out. I mean, that intersection's terrible. And I think a roundabout would make sense. I'm just curious if it's gonna back up traffic.
I'll make sure to get a
On
PDF
117.
of those plans for your review. And
That's, Pam, is that pretty much final now?
is what final?
The roundabout by the high school?
Yes,
Okay, so,
as far as
Great.
I know, yes.
okay, so
Yeah.
there had been concern about the architects for the building project interfacing with the town, but I guess that's all been resolved.
Yes, I believe they had conversation.
So, the last selectmen's meeting or before that, I guess the cost had gone up and then they put in another grant or something. I don't know if it was a grant, but the cost is, they got the added cost. So now it's like a 1.5 million, but it's all basically covered, I think.
It's encouraging.
Yeah. Although I think there was some contention over geothermal wells and the rotary because they're kind of in close proximity or something.
Yes,
for the
that
new
was the
school.
issue I was referring, I thought Bob was referring to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that, Pam. Any other updates?
Did I have any other? No, just the minutes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so on your email.
Oh, and the goals, I'm sorry, the master plan goals.
Oh, yeah.
Any
On
of you were
your
there?
email, I only saw minutes from the September 27th. You mentioned July
Yeah.
26th, August 16th as well.
We haven't approved those yet. I thought Jim was working on those. If he's
Oh,
not, we
Yeah,
can get him.
I am. I'll get into it. Like I said, ASAP.
Jim, if you haven't started yet, we'll take care of it in the office.
I haven't done the 16th yet. The 26th, I'm halfway through.
Okay, so I'll take care of the other one then.
Okay,
Thank you for doing the. You said
Yeah.
you haven't started the 16th, right?
No, I have not.
Okay, we'll do those. Thank you for doing the
Okay.
other set.
Well, no worries.
Yeah, you want to talk about the goals and the public
Yeah,
forum?
sure, we had a public forum Monday evening to review draft set of goals for the master plan. And there was a good turnout, I thought. There were about 20 people in the room in person, and then another 20 people that attended virtually online. We received various comments. We broke out into groups, and there seemed to be a lot of consensus about what the community wants in terms of long-term planning. So the consultant is taking all the written comments and input from the various groups and compiling them and creating more detailed implementation items, and we'll have those for review probably within a couple of weeks. Austin gave me, he wasn't able to attend, but he did provide written comments, so we are collecting those for people that weren't able to attend. And then I'll present them to the board and keep you up to date on the status of those. I just had a question about, we're beginning our budget process. And I didn't know of the planning board's involvement in that. If you like the budget presented to you, or if you have, I've never worked with an elected board before, so I don't know if you're involved in that at all.
Very little. I think they put a line item in for training and
Mhm.
maybe like some paperwork stuff, but that, yeah, I think
Okay.
training is the only thing that affects the
Training.
board. I don't think we've put anything else in the
Okay.
past.
Pam, what about some incidental expenses for the master plan committee?
Well, you're done this fiscal year, so it would be. That's supposed to be completed by June 30th.
So hopefully it'll be done by June 30th.
Yes. It's
sorry.
it's supposed to be done by June 30th. That's when our
I'm at the end
grant,
of my 4th year.
that's when the grant expires, so we have to have a end product to present to the state.
Right.
By the time you finish, you're gonna have to start the next one, Bob.
Yeah, I think you may be right.
Oh, you have a great sense of humor.
I feel like they've gotten a lot done over the last few months anyway.
Could blame COVID.
Yeah. Well, it's very true. I mean, it was off to a wild start in the beginning, and that went on for about 8 months, and then
Got shut down.
it did. It really did. I think there was Zoom ennui.
Okay, so Pam, if there's nothing else there, we can at least approve the September 27th meetings,
Yes.
meeting minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if everyone got a chance to look at those. I reviewed them. Fine. So I'll make a motion to approve the planning board minutes from September 27th, 2023.
I'll second that.
Michael Gore,
Aye.
James Barr,
Aye.
Robert Romer,
Aye.
Austin Groner.
not
Absent
here.
Eric Nyland,
Aye.
Michael Lau.
Aye.
The minutes pass.
All right. Anything else that people want to talk about? No? Okay.
Nope.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Thanks, everyone. Tough meeting. Sorry.
Thanks.
Thanks,
No
Pam.
problem.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Yes.
Aye.
Bye.